Now Holloway, the leading rusher for Oklahoma, almost 5.5 a carry, has -8 on 5 rushes. Home run ball. Jackson has it.
And now,
Snacking off the podcast.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and do real quick. I'll do the honorable mentions on the worst side. The ones that didn't get they didn't get quite the score to get into that top 5 of the worst, and that would be Ron Dane was one. Danny Werfel, go ahead and complain about this one, Nikki. Danny Werfel.
Worse.
I'm surprised he didn't make it.
He did not make it into the top 5, but he got one vote.
That had to have been from Bob.
Maybe.
It's that Kentucky-Florida rivalry.
Yeah. You never beat him, so. Or Tebow. Or Spurrier. Did Kentucky beat any of Florida's Heisman?
I'm going to let you
not
have that one. I have no idea.
No, I think it wasn't until the late teens that they had beaten Florida after a long streak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they beat Florida in '86, I believe, and then the next one was like in the 2020s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's poor Bob.
Poor Bob.
Where is Bob? Oh, he's back. Hold on, let me bring him back in. All right, Bob. Now you can defend yourself.
Yeah, 2018 is when we beat Florida with our great defensive end.
That's right.
That's what I said.
They had the whole second half. All they had to do was score one time, and our defense crushed them utterly.
Was that Josh Allen on that defense?
Yeah, they also had like 3 or 4 other guys that played in the pros.
Yeah, that was a really good defense for Kentucky. Those dudes were out there hitting people.
Yeah, they were unbelievable defense, and that was the start of Kentucky becoming a force in recruiting and developing linebackers, which there's tons of UK linebackers now in the pros because of it. But he was a great
tell Jamin Davis to get his shit together.
That's right.
Sounds like a disgruntled Washington football fan.
I didn't understand that pick, Ed, because Jamin Davis was the second middle linebacker in our defense, and he didn't really call it. And I never really thought that Washington wanted one. I thought they wanted to run a lot. They needed somebody to call the defense.
All right, so let me see.
He is starting to get better, but, you know.
Let me see who picked Werfel.
Yeah.
I think it's Bob. I don't have him on my list.
Okay, let's see.
But worst ever? I can't believe I
At least he won a national championship.
I thought Werfel was good. No, he's
No. He didn't have. It ain't Bob. Let me see.
Ed. It's got to be Ed.
Okay, no. So that's best.
Oh, my camera.
Yeah, it's Ed. Ed had him at number 4 worst.
And the only reason I didn't confess is because I don't remember.
Hallelujah.
Oh, wow. All right, so I got a couple more guys on this.
I do not recall, Ed. That's the line. I do not recall.
A couple more honorable
but then
mentions.
I sound like Bill Clinton.
Did he say he didn't recall?
Yeah.
No, he said he recalled he did not have sexual relations with that woman.
I mean, that may technically be true.
I mean, it depends on how you define sexual relations.
That's my point.
And with that, we go to our next honorable mention.
Troy Smith.
Yeah,
I voted for him, so everyone else must have, didn't agree. But
He was actually on my list.
I voted for him. I felt he was.
I think that's a good pick.
No, Sean, you got him on the worst.
I voted for him, but he didn't make the list.
Right? Yeah, you got him at 5. You should put him at 1. That would have helped.
No, he's not worthy of it.
Well, that's why I didn't get there. But anyway, and one more, and Nikki will love this one. Chris Winkie.
Oh yeah, he's on my list. He was number 1.
But Nikki should really appreciate that Troy Smith one because we knew he was Fugazi when Florida destroyed Ohio State in that national championship game.
Oh yeah,
I had him at number 3.
That's even better. Yeah. So, But Chris Winky, I mean, come on. You're picking on an old man.
Why?
I might as well put Ed on this list.
An award away from a kid. I mean, that's just mean. That's like stealing candy from a baby.
What was he, 28, 29 when he won the Heisman?
Yeah, 20. I think he
26 or 27. What, he 28 when he got in 29 when he got in the NFL?
Hold on, let me look. I got all the Heisman pulled up here. Let's see, Chris Winky, 2000.
Sean, do you work for Google?
No, I do not work for Google.
Okay.
See, his birthday's 1972.
Yeah, so he's 28 when he wins the Heisman in 2000.
Number 5, Rashawn Salam, University of Colorado, 1994.
There might have been better players on the same team. I mean, like Eric Bieniemy, and they and there were so many choices in those days. But
Bieniemy was gone by that point.
Well, I just thought the option quarterbacks, were unlikely to win it at that stage of the 90s, but he was one of the last of them. But I don't know. He had a chance to win the Natty. And,
but I think that this list is going to end up being these guys sucked in the pros.
Well, here's a quick little point on this one. So this was the 94 Heisman winner, and certainly I think he had a 2,000-yard rushing season. Colorado was very good. I believe they went 10-1-1 that year. But here's the thing. As great as he was, statistically in that season, he wasn't the best player on his own team.
Yeah.
Cordell Stewart was.
That's what I was trying to say. Is Cordell Stewart was an option quarterback. I thought he should have won it.
Great memory for Ed. They started the season off in 94 with the Hello, Hail Mary, Keith Jackson, touchdown, Colorado,
to Michael Westbrook.
Westbrook's got it in the end zone. The Buffaloes are going to celebrate in the big house with an upset win. But
all right, Keith, relax.
Said relax, don't do it.
Okay, so that was number 5.
But like his first year in the NFL, you immediately saw Salam spring a leak. I believe he led the NFL in fumbles that year for the Chicago Bears, which, surprise, surprise, the Bears draft a bad, player. And then he had the, numerous, I think marijuana issues, which at the time, say what you will now, it's legal. But at the time, you got to follow the rules in the NFL. And I think he got busted for weed a number of times. And he just never materialized. And it was sort of that one-hit. We talk about these Heisman one-hit wonders, which is the opposite of one of our, honorable mentions, Ron Dane. He got like the Lifetime Achievement Award, Heisman. But this was like your one-hit wonder. And so you look at 94, that Heisman year. And I think there were other more deserving options in 94. And I would offer, and this is because there's inherently bias, as we know, but the best player that year was a player in FCS, and that's a player by the name of Steve Air McNair. But they weren't going to give it to a guy. I think he went to Alcorn State.
Alcorn State, yes.
Yeah, too small.
And that's a shame because we all know not only was he the best player that year, but then he had a illustrious NFL career that was only unfortunately marred by that guy went through remember they did the Bionic Man picture on SportsCenter of how many different surgeries Steve McNair has had in his NFL
it was
career.
incredible.
The guy was made of steel.
He wasn't eligible, actually, was he? I mean, could they have given it to him?
They could, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But when you play at the FCS level, they're just not going to give it to you. But I think anybody that watched that year, because that was kind of a weak year for the Heisman. They just weren't going to.
So it's one of those things where he's technically eligible, but not really.
Yeah,
they're
I mean,
give it.
There's that inherent bias, and it's to this point, like in current day, like a great group of 5 player likely isn't going to win it. I mean, we talked about it a few episodes ago regarding, Randy Moss had that incredible season with Marshall. He wasn't even close.
Well, I think in today's day and age, if the team was undefeated and got in the playoffs, that a guy could win.
Well, I think they should just change it on the fact that they should allow 1 year it to happen.
Yeah, no, I
And
agree.
just change it up and show that you don't have to be just D1,
Their argument is going to be there is I believe it's the Walter Payton Trophy is the FCS equivalent, or no, excuse me, the Harlan Hill Trophy, I think. But either way, yeah, I think regardless of levels, everyone.
It's weak. Like 94, they should have just went ahead and did it.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Let me look at our finalists from the '94 campaign. The finalists, outside of Rashawn Salam winning, and we've already made our argument for Steve McNair, who I think was the best player that year in all of college football. You had Kajana Carter on that great Penn State team, was the runner-up. And then finishing fourth was also from that great Penn State team, Kerry Collins, quarterback, who, they were both part of a great team, but neither of them were, super standouts compared to Salam and McNair individually. But again, the bias of not wanting to give it to, I think this wasn't even FCS back then. They just thought one double A, if you guys remember that.
That's right.
So, Salam goes down. He had a great statistic. I mean, you can look at his statistics; they were great for that season. He was a 2,000-yard rusher.
Well, they were misleading because of the way they ran the option. So his yards per attempt were very high because he didn't get the ball to the very end. He'd already be on the edge.
Right.
So he wasn't like Ron Dane, where he was powering up the middle, for 5 yards of carry. He would be completely on the edge, and then when he'd get the ball, then it would be big gains for him. So he wasn't really the kind of rusher that Chicago really needed, but his stats were gaudy because of the way they run the option,
Absolutely agree. Yeah, he going from that option attack in Colorado to more of the traditional power eye pro set in Chicago. He wasn't equipped to that, and it clearly showed. He played 3 years for the Bears, and his rookie year was his best year, and that was he barely eclipsed 1,000 yards rushing.
And he was done after 3, wasn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it just he had a lot of issues off the field that just didn't allow him to maximize his potential.
And at the end of his life, I believe he was living under a bridge in Boulder.
Yeah, it's very sad story for him. I'm not trying to pile on with just thinking he's not.
No, it is a sad story.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, he's deserving to be on this list.
Number 4, Eric Crouch, University of Nebraska, 2001.
How is he not higher?
He really only got one vote. He got one first place vote.
I voted for him for first. I think he's, in my lifetime, the worst Heisman Trophy winner of my life.
Why do you think? I mean, he was a good dual threat quarterback. He was. I think the best argument
won the
is that
off of a highlight play that ESPN showed about 500 times.
Are you talking about the Oklahoma game?
Yeah, where he goes out and catches the pass and stumbles into the end zone. Like that.
And the thing is, it was a very good team. He really was not a great passer.
He was so bad as a passer, the NFL told him he needs to play wide receiver. That's how bad of a passer he was.
Yeah.
Look, James just made a good point. Like, none of these guys made it to the Heisman house. So it's not just us that feel this way.
Nissan doesn't even. That's so great. Oh, that's a great point. That's a beautiful point. You're so bad you have a Heisman. We're not inviting you to the Heisman house.
I mean, even Reggie got his taken away, and he has still, got it back now, but he still was on the commercials.
They showed 80 however many years old Paul Hornung in a Barker lounge chair before they showed some of these guys, and poor Paul Hornung. I think at that point in time he had a foot in the grave, but they still rather show him than show. I mean, Eric Crouch is like part of the Heisman Witness Protection Program.
Well, nobody would know who he was on the commercial.
Yeah.
Even if he was wearing a Nebraska jersey, because people, if you talk to 20-year-olds right now, they go, "Who is Nebraska?" That's how that. I read a stat today, and I know a little tangent here, real quick. Were you guys aware that Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl game in 8 years?
Wow.
Yeah, I believe it.
This last year, they were the last game of the season. They were fighting to become bowl eligible.
They need a win, right, to get to a bowl, and they frittered it away against Iowa.
They were winning by 20-some and blew it away.
And Iowa mounted a comeback. First off, Iowa, Iowa, great defense. They're still figuring out Walter Camp's rules for offense. When he wrote the rules to college football back in I think 1892, and Nebraska still figured out a way to lose that game. That's incredible.
I mean, that's their story though.
Which if all of us time traveled back, because we all watched Nebraska in the 90s, if we were doing this back then and we had a call like this, you go, what if I told you in 25 years Nebraska will be absolutely irrelevant?
So I have to provide an update that is proof that things have gotten out of hand. But right now there is a Nathan's hot dog eating contest preview show.
Goodness.
That is definitely things have gotten it's jumped the shark, but none of us in 1997 had we had this discussion. If I had said in 20 years Nebraska will be completely irrelevant in the college football sphere, you would have laughed me out of the room.
Yeah, they were too dominant.
They were so dominant in the 90s, and now they're not even not a first thought, not a second thought, not even a third thought in their own conference.
They're like Minnesota.
So this would be an episode by itself. So I don't want to get too deep into that.
I caution everybody. This is year 2 for Matt Rule.
Oh. Well, yeah, I think he's going to turn. I think he might turn them around. They have so much hold on.
We're just going to have to watch
program.
Because I think really the problem with Nebraska is it's not a great location. It never was. But
right.
At one point they could go into Texas because they played Texas teams.
Yep.
On the reg, and they could go into Texas and recruit, and they could also go into California and recruit because they were a big name. But now they don't have that name anymore, and they don't have the Texas connection anymore.
Those two pipelines.
Lincoln is ranked as one of the top retirement destinations in the country. So the pitch comes in Nebraska.
18-year-old dad.
What?
I wonder if they have sponges like the Village does.
You said retirement. These are 18-year-old kids.
No, the pitches come to Nebraska and stay.
They don't want to stay. They want to be there 2, maybe 3 years and go to the NFL, and Doug is absolutely right. When those pipelines, that faucet of talent from Southern California and Texas got turned off, you cannot replace that when you're Nebraska with Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, and Minnesota and the 2 Dakotas. You can't. And I don't care how good of Matt. Get rid of Matt Rule and bring Bill Belichick in. For all I care, or wake up the ghost of Vince Lombardi. I don't see it happening.
Well, they also don't allow their coaches to have control of their programs. So on top of it, they lose that ability.
Lombardi could do it.
Maybe Lombardi could do it. Yeah.
Snellenberger could do it.
I don't know. I don't think he could.
He didn't pull it off at Oklahoma. Of course, he was only there for a season.
He could do it in Miami because literally you can fall out of your backyard and stumble on 5-star talent in Miami. You can't do that in Lincoln.
Bryant had made the comment in the 60s, if they ever get a coach down at Miami, that's going to be a powerhouse program. And matter of fact, all the Florida schools.
Yeah.
Because that was, I mean,
it's
and
not hard
people
to recruit in Florida.
The big teams were coming down there and stealing the players for a long time. And then all of a sudden, you couldn't pull it off anymore.
And kids would rather go there than Nebraska, the middle of, cornfield. So, of course.
If I can go to Gainesville, Coral Gables, or even Tallahassee, sorry, Nikki, and say what you will, but it's still better than when it's 6 degrees and there's 3 feet of snow outside in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Number 3, Ty Detmer, Brigham Young University, 1990.
Eric Crouch, I don't think even suited up for one NFL game. Ty Detmer had an illustrious career as a journeyman backup in the NFL with numerous spot starts. So there's some serious Ty Detmer hatred here.
He also threw for a gazillion yards in college.
All right, who got that? Let me see who got Detmer.
And the guy that should have the most gripe with Detmer should be me. I don't even have him on my list.
All right, so Dr. Balls does not like Ty Detmer.
I just felt like he was one of those system players that put up a whole lot of yards and didn't accomplish anything. Right? He reminded me of an Oklahoma quarterback from So he just put up tons and tons and tons of stats, sure, but they just didn't win the shit that mattered. They never felt like they were in any kind of contention. That was just piling up yards.
Now, didn't they upset the Hurricanes? I think that might also be why Bob is a little perturbed.
Well, that's what it's really about. See, now he
he's figured it out.
You can fool a lot of people, Bob. You can't fool me.
So there was some hatred there because the Canes lost to him, which I thought they should have beat them, but it's what it is. But he wasn't Steve Young, man. I mean, he wasn't. I mean, he did decent. There's a lot of players that come in the NFL as backups and eventually got good. What was that guy in Chicago that stayed there was it Kate McNown that stayed there all them years and then he finally become a quarterback?
No, he was quickly. He was quickly escorted out of the Windy City.
There's a guy.
He was drafted in the first round out of UCLA, and I think the first sign that he was in trouble was they were at training camp, and he's a very able-bodied starting NFL quarterback, and he parked at a handicap spot. That started him down the wrong road with the fan base in Chicago.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about 1990, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So Detmer was 1 in the 90. The Rocket, Regib Ismail, was 2nd.
That's who I thought should have won it. That's who I thought should have won it was Ismail, by the way.
Eric Bieniemy, your guy from Colorado, was 3rd. Sean Moore from Virginia was 4th. 5th was, here's another guy that lit up the stat sheet in college, and he was a terrible NFL quarterback. Remember David Klingler from Houston?
Oh, yeah.
He was 5th, and probably
didn't he follow Andre Ware?
He did, yep. The same, that Houston run and shoot system. He was the plug and play after Andre Ware won it in '89. And probably the best player on this list who finished 6th, who had a great NFL career, was wide receiver out of Virginia, Herman Moore, who had a very illustrious career with the Detroit Lions.
He was a health player.
So this was not a great year for the Heisman, but I think Detmer might have won it because of that win over Miami. And the 90 Miami wasn't a bad team.
Well, they were a decent team, man.
No, just ask Texas.
Right, I was going to say, didn't they beat Texas like 40-3 in that Cotton Bowl?
40-3. I mean, it was real bad like that, and I think Miami had.
Excuse me, I was being.
They had close to 200 yards and freaking penalties.
200 yards and penalties, and they beat them 46-3.
Yeah, I loved that. That was special to me. I mean, I saw that one on AFRTS that bowl, and half my roommates were from Miami or South Florida. And not my roommates, but guys on the same floor as I was in the barracks at that time. And we were all huddled around the TV rooting for the Canes, and one of them kept going, "That was Canes!" Like
I remember the shirt that was making a circulation down in Florida right after that was the "We Mess with Texas" shirt.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's kind of why Detmer won it that year. Week 1, Miami visited BYU on ESPN. I have a very vague recollection. We had just got cable at the house and remember this game. The one thing I do remember is, and it's always kind of stuck with me, is regardless how you feel about BYU, you have to admit their stadium and that backdrop with the mountains is probably one of the most beautiful scenic settings in all of college football.
That's awesome.
And they beat Miami 28-21 in that game, and that I think was one of their record crowd attendance. They put 66,235 in that stadium. I don't even think it technically seats that many. So clearly they were pumped up for the Hurricanes. Canes went on to win all the rest of the games, but they went to South Bend, lost the Irish in the rivalry game. That was a great game, and they finished it off by beating the devil out of Texas in the Cotton Bowl 46-3.
All right, so let's jump to the next quarterback, guys.
Number 2, Jason White, University of Oklahoma, 2003.
I think everybody voted for this person. I would hope.
Oh yeah.
Somebody.
I don't think I did.
Somebody had him at 4, and somebody had him at 3. He was technically tied with the last 3 that we named. The only reason I put him at 2 is because he had 2 votes instead of 1 vote.
Well, it's a good choice as the tiebreaker to move him up.
Yep.
I think Jason White had a very good career at Oklahoma. I mean, really good. The numbers speak for themselves, and kudos to him for coming back from 2 full reconstructive knee surgeries. Mm-hmm. I think that was the rub on him. That's why he didn't get consideration for the NFL, is because they just worried about both of his knees.
Whether he was broke for good, right?
Right. But the rub with him is the absolute travesty of him winning and not the best player in college football that year.
Yeah.
And we all know who that player was.
Who did you got?
It's Larry Fitzgerald, without a question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Larry Fitzgerald's on a bad Pitt Panther team. I think he caught a touchdown in every game that year. Yeah, he would. Yeah. Without him, Pitt might have won 1 or 2 games that year. And
but you hit the nail on the head. They're not going to give it to a guy on a bad team, no matter how great he is.
Which is wrong.
It hasn't always been like that, but it really has.
It hasn't always been like that
since 1990. I guess that's why we're starting in 1990, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could argue. I mean, Barry Sanders' Oklahoma State team wasn't a world-beating team.
They were 10 win.
They were 10 win, but
but they lost the only games that mattered: Oklahoma and Nebraska.
Right? Yeah, the Big 8 back then.
Every year
it was, you got to go through Oklahoma and Nebraska. They didn't beat them, but Barry still was incredible even in those losses. Whereas, Jason White, that year that he won the Heisman, Nick Saban and LSU made him look pedestrian in the BCS National Championship game. And you look at Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, he was catching touchdown passes from a guy that's probably in the insurance business at this point in life.
Has there ever been another Heisman that didn't even get a walk-on tryout in the NFL?
I think he's the last one that didn't even get it was him. Crouch got a workout from at the time St. Louis Rams, but they wanted him to play wide receiver, and that just didn't fit. So it's those 2 I think are the last. 'Cause after that you had Leinart, who did go to the NFL. Then you had Reggie Bush. Then you had Troy Smith did get drafted late by the Ravens, I think it was. Then obviously Tim Tebow, he played for the Broncos, won a playoff game. Then you had Sam help me out. Sam Bradford from Oklahoma. He played for a number of years for the Rams. Mm-hmm. 9, you had Alabama's first in Mark Ingram. He played. I think he might even still be in the NFL. I'm not sure, but I think this is the last one that did not even make an NFL training camp.
Yeah.
That's also in the 90s when the Heisman also was pretty much looked at as a quarterback award. I mean,
I bet you won't see him at the Heisman House, will you?
He was last year. We just didn't notice him.
Let's go ahead and slay one more quarterback, guys.
Number 1, Gino Toretta, University of Miami, 1992.
They hopped him up hard too, man. But I was a Miami fan, but I seen that he wasn't making reads, and really that was a great team, especially defensively, and he had a lot of talent. So when he could actually get the ball in their hands, they could do a lot with it. But he ran a lot of short stuff. He reminded me similar to Steve Walsh. And then you got your classic collapse in the bowl game with Alabama and the national, which turned out to be the national championship. So,
I completely agree. And the other thing the two things I think about are one. I know he wasn't as old as Chris Winkie, who we've identified as our oldest Heisman winner. But boy, didn't he look at that senior year? You go, man, we take his helmet off. You look like
25.
Yeah,
this dude's 21 going on 45.
Yeah, my dad used to say, this guy looks like a grandpa.
Right, yeah. He had
and here's what I think happened with him. And he did have a decent year, but I think he was just riding the momentum of Miami QBs.
Right.
And so everybody's like, okay, this is the Miami quarterback.
You beat me to my second point, Doug, which was, you got one, this guy had a great statistical year, even though he looks like he's 45 years old. Bob had the other point. For a guy he's a very prototypical pocket quarterback, big bodied, 6'4", 215 pounds. Didn't have a strong arm by any means. And then number 3, this was coming towards the end of that great Miami run. So he's got kind of the legacy, but he wasn't even close to the best of the quarterbacks that Miami had in that run.
No.
Started with Jim Kelly, and then you had Bernie Kosar, and then you had Vinny Testaverde, who all had very long NFL careers. Kelly's was the best. So he was getting that kind of, credential, even though he really didn't deserve it. Now,
but at that point, if you had a pulse and you were Miami's quarterback, you were in
the
Heisman
guy.
race.
You were the guy, yeah.
And you were definitely in the Heisman race.
And then, unfortunately, the Sugar Bowl was played, on New Year's Eve, which is well after the Heisman. He got exposed. And I think if you, could redo it, you go, after watching how just absolutely destroyed he was by the Alabama defense and how he couldn't read it, couldn't make pre-snap adjustments. I mean, he was, for a guy that couldn't run, he was trying to run for his life that night.
Yeah. It was a very similar performance to Dumb O'Neal O'Donnell in the Super Bowl against the Cowboys. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is the only reason I had Crouch hired simply because, at least Toretta put a full season together and didn't need that, like what ESPN now loves to call every week, or Game Day loves to call every week, that Heisman moment. Like a Heisman shouldn't be won on a moment. It should be, you win it by consistency throughout the entire season. And I'll give, Toretta his due. In 92, they got at least into the Sugar Bowl unbeaten, and before they were absolutely housed by Alabama. But there was no real Heisman moment for him. It was just a sort of, okay, we're getting the job done every week. But let's look at who he beat in the 1992 Heisman voting, and again, we're going to see bias. With the runner-up and third place were arguably better football players. Number 2, who earned his fame about 7 years later with the greatest show on turf, Marshall Faulk. But unfortunately, he played for San Diego State.
Yeah.
And so you're on the West Coast. 2, you're on a a group of 5 team. But for those that watched, everyone knew Marshall Faulk was the best player in college football that year. He proved it a few years later in the NFL. I think he has an NFL MVP award to his name.
Because being on the West Coast and in a group of 5 team, nobody saw him on
no
TV.
one's watching you. No one is watching you. Yeah, wait, San Diego State, they're playing in that old baseball stadium, I'm not watching that game. Yeah, Qualcomm, yeah. And even third has an argument. Garrison Hurst of Georgia had a great year there. And then in the NFL, he was great with the 49ers.
Yeah, he was.
So, this was to me, the Heisman voters, well, he's the quarterback. He's at Miami. They're unbeaten. Easy money. We'll just mail it in. And, he won handily over Faulk, which, we all look at now and go, yikes.
Thank you for supporting Smacking Off the podcast on the X's and O's network. Be sure to keep up with our scheduled live casts and other presentations on Facebook at Smackologists or at Smacking Off, and on our YouTube channel at Smacking Off the Podcast.